Like a lot of its gaming brethren, Afterfall InSanity opens up with one of those adorable, inconsequential little tutorial missions where one or two enemies pop out at you at a time, just so the game can make sure that you know how to walk forward and click the left mouse button. The game features mostly hand-to-hand combat, so like in any tutorial, it sets up enemies that will just run straight into your fists and then fall down without exhibiting any real resistance. It's tedious, but it's customary for most modern games. Soon enough after this segment, Albert the protagonist wakes up and realizes that he was merely dreaming, but he fails to comprehend that his mere dream was not just a tutorial level, but a dark omen of things to come. In the waking world, he is sinking into an unbridled madness, one which will consume him and force him to replay that tutorial level for the following 5.5 hours. All sarcasm aside though, Afterfall is an extremely simplistic, boring game about hitting stupid enemies until they die. Lots of good games, like Doom, Vivisector, or the Batman Arkham games, have a visceral thrill to the act of blasting away or beating the shit out of stupid enemies, but they don't feature just stupid enemies. Instead, they feature numerous, varied stupid enemies who surround you and try to overwhelm you. Here, the game just spawns one or two, or in some rare cases, 3 whole bad guys, and they're as dumb as possible. Occasionally, some enemies spawn behind you and manage to hit you before you can react, but they still provide extremely little challenge, and obviously, to try to make up for anything by spawning enemies behind you is pretty cheap. The actual system of combat is pretty much equally flaccid. You left-click to swing or fire your weapon, and you right-click to block an enemy attack. Then you tap the run key to do a dodge move, if ever that's actually necessary, and that's it. It functions fairly well enough because it doesn't pit you against any complex challenge, but it doesn't even attempt to make your moves interesting. The game also outfits you with regenerating health and is generous with weapon placement, making fire axes and saw blades and crowbars available absolutely fucking everywhere. All you have to do is keep clicking on enemies within hitting distance, and then they'll ragdollize and maybe lose an extremity. Killing is even more trivial when you have a gun, because enemies still have no sense of self-preservation. If they have melee weapons, they run directly at you, allowing easy headshots. If they have guns, they stand in one place, allowing easy headshots. I don't think I can overstate how easy Afterfall is. I'm generally competent, but I'll be modest, I'm not the kind of person you want creating speedruns and game guides. I mess up plenty of times in a lot of games I play, but after a while in this game I realized that I was immune to almost everything. I was playing on the middle available difficulty, and though I had fallen victim to a few QuickTime events and timed puzzles with poorly explained interfaces, I began to notice the strange fact that enemies posed absolutely no real threat to me. The absolutely pathetic AI, the regenerating health, and this stamina bar thing that doesn't actually matter because it regenerates instantly, it all just meant that I could keep swinging a fire axe, and I would come out of nearly any fight unscathed. As the moment of death at the hands of an enemy finally arrived in this 5.5 hour long game, I checked my Steam overlay to find that I had been mindlessly rushing enemies without consequence for almost 4.5 hours. On higher difficulty levels, enemies do more damage than their middle difficulty whisper kicks would have suggested, but they add very little challenge to the situation. Regenerating health still rushes to the rescue at any potential sign of actual challenge, and the dodge move proves itself the solution to all of life's problems. The campaign follows what could be considered a story that wants to be seen as a character study, but doesn't actually have any of the necessary style or content or quality to back itself up. The narrative focuses on Albert Tokai, a stressed-out psychiatrist living in an underground nuclear apocalypse survival settlement in Poland. He gets sent to check out low morale in one of the lower levels of the base and ends up killing the local zombie population, only to find that everyone else is either going just as mad or turning into melted flesh imp things. The story tries to incorporate romance, political philosophy, and vague symbolism, and that's putting it optimistically. But realistically, it's got this hack quality to everything. The love interest is extant in the protagonist's dilemma, and then she just sort of leaves after a while. And everything else that should probably matter just feels like it was part of a checklist of things that other better psychological thrillers did in the past. Perhaps fittingly, it all comes to what might be the most predictable and stale conclusion possible. Given that this is a low-budget game from Poland and that I'm a complete translation apologist, I can understand that any game of Afterfall's stature would probably have problems finding really compelling actors or a perfect translation, but it's got just about everything wrong with it. It's fairly disheartening when what's supposed to be a futuristic psychological science fiction thriller feels like it takes more inspiration from The Room than something like Jacob's Ladder. But that's exactly what it feels like. A post-nuclear The Room with a lot of fire axes. There are some obvious small translation problems from Polish to English, but the hack writing has this intense lack of intelligence to it that transcends any translation. I don't think the acting could be any worse either without all the enemies being replaced by Nicolas Cage. Whenever a character has to emote in any way, he displays almost the exact opposite mood he should.
That's what I heard from Marcin. He said he needs to talk to you about it.
Marcin. He's dead.
Oh my god! How? Oh my god! How? Oh my god! How?
This is perhaps most apparent in one of the most fascinating scenes in the game, a twist that occurs a while after you exit your underground vault. It's perhaps the most visually and stylistically impressive sequence, and it would have been absolutely awe-striking had the main character reacted with actual shock, rather than some semblance of casual annoyance. What's awe-striking instead is that I'm reviewing the quote-unquote extended edition of the game. I didn't play the original edition that came out last year, but I can definitely picture that the developers didn't use their opportunity to improve Afterfall InSanity by actually improving Afterfall InSanity. Apart from its audio-visual design, just about every aspect of it is at the bottom of the barrel. Given the opportunity the developers had to fix and re-release their game, perhaps it's inherently so. Afterfall is so unrelentingly simplistic and stupid that it just repeats its most basic content over and over and over again. If it's something you want, it's an experience you can get from replaying the demo for a few hours. Otherwise, it's best just left on its own.